Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving deep into the hidden frameworks that govern our minds, our financial choices, and honestly, our collective history. Prepare to look at your own thoughts in a completely different way as we unpack Mindnomics, the architecture of anxiety.
Okay, picture this. The room's quiet. Suddenly your phone lights up. Inside a message bubble, those three little dots appear. Someone is typing. You wait. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and then the dots disappear. Nothing. Just silence. Almost instantly, your heart beats a little faster. Your mind starts racing, filling in the blanks. Wait, did I say something wrong? So why does your brain treat absolute silence, a complete lack of information, like an immediate physical threat?
Well, to really get why that happens, we've got to look at the architecture of anxiety. Our overarching theme for this explainer is figuring out exactly why uncertainty is fundamentally more stressful to your biology than actual confirmed bad news. What we typically call anxiety isn't some personal failure. It's actually an ancient evolutionary architecture just struggling to cope with modern information.
Part 1. The Prediction Engine. Here's the thing about human cognitive processing. It instantly overloads when it tries to resolve really complex, conflicting choices using raw calculation alone. Your brain, you see, is not a calculator. It's a prediction engine. And when it faces missing data, like those disappearing text dots, it doesn't just compute a simple error code. It experiences a severe emotional and biological crisis.
When your conscious mind overloads and that logical cost-benefit math completely collapses under the weight of incomplete data, your brain forces a survival shortcut. It basically abandons the math entirely and lets what we call emotional heuristics, rapid, visceral gut feelings, take complete control of the wheel.
Part 2. The Ambiguity Trap.
Way back in the early 20th century, an economist named Frank Knight made a massive breakthrough on this. He proved there is a strict biological difference between measurable risk, like, say, knowing the exact odds of rolling a 6 on a dice, and true Nietzschean uncertainty, where future outcomes are entirely unpredictable. We handle risks just fine, but ambiguity, that traps us. It completely shorts out our logical circuits.
So, how exactly does our biology respond to this trap? Through somatic markers. These are instantaneous bodily changes, like a racing heart or that sudden knot in your stomach, processed by a part of your brain called the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, or VMPFC. Your brain literally translates cold, complex logic into warm, visceral bodily feelings to rapidly warn you of danger well before you even consciously realize it.
Let me give you a crazy example, the famous Iowa gambling task. In clinical trials, healthy individuals playing a card game actually develop anticipatory sweat responses on their palms right before they pick from rigged, high-risk decks. Their body is literally warning them before their conscious mind figures it out. But patients with damage to that VMPFC region, they fail to generate these physical warnings. And despite having perfectly intact IQs, they make ruinous choices. Your subconscious body is your true inner compass.
Part 3. The Logic of Loss. Now, what happens when this highly evolved, body-driven navigation system is forced to deal with the abstract math of modern financial markets? It behaves entirely irrationally. Enter prospect theory, pioneered by psychologists Kahneman and Tversky. They prove that humans do not calculate their wealth in absolute terms. Nope, we calculate value asymmetrically. It's based entirely on highly subjective relative gains and losses from wherever we currently happen to stand.
2x. That multiplier right there is the absolute key to understanding human behavior. This is the core math of loss aversion. The psychological and emotional pain you feel from a loss cuts roughly twice as deep as the pleasure you get from an identical gain.
Think about it like this. You find a $20 bill on the sidewalk. You get a brief, pleasant flash of happiness, right? But losing a $20 bill out of your own pocket? Oh man. That triggers an intense, prolonged frustration that'll make you aggressively retrace your steps and complain to literally anyone who will listen for the rest of the afternoon. The mathematical, monetary value is identical, but your emotional response is completely lopsided.
And because of this lopsided emotion, we actively self-sabotage. It's a phenomenon known as the Ellsberg Paradox, which proves our ambiguity aversion. We flatly refuse to gamble on what we do not know. We'll routinely reject an ambiguous option and choose a known risk, even if the unknown option mathematically promises us a much higher yield. We would rather guarantee a smaller win or even a known loss than face the pure stress of uncertainty.
Part 4. The 1929 Crash.
So zoom out with me for a second. What happens when millions of individual brains, with their deep, evolutionary fear of loss and ambiguity, overload at the exact same moment? Well, speculative bubbles and economic crashes aren't random accidents. They are recurring historical fixtures driven by mass psychology. Global financial collapses are simply individual human biology and panic written large across an entire society.
Take the Great Crash, for example. In the 1920s, massive debt finance speculation built a huge, fragile bubble. Then, in 1929, a trigger event caused millions of people to simultaneously cave to loss aversion, creating a systemic market implosion. By the 1930s, that individual biological panic had mutated into a devastating, prolonged economic depression.
And this panic was massively amplified by the collision of biology and systemic structure. Mass loss aversion triggered those synchronized global sell-offs, but structural policy decisions, specifically Herbert Hoover's tax hikes and restricted early fiscal spending, really compounded the crisis. This deadly combination of mass psychology and policy response turned a standard market correction into the Great Depression.
Part 5. Breaking the Loop.
But here is the good news. We are not just helpless victims of our evolutionary biology or blind market forces. Through evidence-based science and intentional engineering, systems and individual minds can actually be structurally insulated against panic.
We actually have blueprints for resilience. First, acknowledge the actual physical toll that chronic uncertainty takes on your neurons. Second, consciously recognize when your brain is substituting a cheap emotional shortcut for actual logic. And third, on a societal level, we absolutely must invest in public education to defend citizens against predatory financial structures. Awareness is the ultimate defense.
Which brings this whole explainer full circle. The next time those three little dots appear on your phone and then just disappear into silence, I want you to remember this truth. Your brain isn't predicting reality, it's predicting possibility, and those are not the same thing. The anxiety you're feeling is just an ancient prediction engine working overtime in a modern world. Understanding how your own mind works is literally the very first step toward changing your life. So, the next time you feel that sudden spike of panic over the unknown, ask yourself, is this a real threat or is my biology just doing the math wrong? Stay curious, question your assumptions, and understand your mind. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer of Mindnomics. See you next time.